Chapter 7 Rose Law Firm. Now, it's known for being the oldest law firm west of the Mississippi, and its origins date back to the 1820s. In its nearly 200 years of history, the firm has been historically active in politics and civic affairs. But perhaps what it's most famous for is the first female partner, Hillary Rodham Clinton. Now, Hillary joined the firm in 1976 as her husband served as Attorney General for the state of Arkansas. But now, as Hillary makes her push for the White House, it seems as though this is another part of her past that she is distancing herself from. Jeff Gerth and Don Van Atta Jr., the authors of Her Way, The Hopes and Ambitions of Hillary Rodham Clinton, recently spoke about Hillary's efforts to separate herself from those 15 years of her professional career.
Her record there was anything but stellar, and she hardly talks about it. You go to her website for her presidential campaign, and that whole 15 years, it's the longest period of time in her professional career, and she doesn't even mention the name the Rose Law Firm.
There's something else about her time at the Rose Law Firm that we report in the book that's important, and that is Hillary actually did some bill padding while she was there, and her reluctance to admit to that in 1992 during Bill Clinton's presidential campaign actually came back to haunt her. She hid this, and it carried through the first term of her husband's presidency.
So as you just heard, her time at Rose came back to haunt her husband's presidency, and surely it will do the same for her. But what is it about the senator's history that is so daunting? We went back into the Clinton archives to find out. In the 1976 election, the separation between the well-to-do and the poorer groups was something that became very apparent. A group called the Association of Community Organizations for Reform, now also known as ACORN, pushed through a ballot initiative that would lower utility rates for residents while increasing them for businesses. The measure passed, fueling outrage in the business community. Several industries quickly filed suit and called on the Rose Law Firm to challenge the measure. Hillary was slated to go head-to-head with the attorneys for ACORN, but just a few years prior, she was introduced to the group's founder, Wade Rathke. And in Her Way, he recalls the days of meeting her something, quote, she understood community. He went on to refer to Hillary as an ally, if not a friend, and, quote, was surprised and shocked to see her there. Hillary was now turning her back on the people she always claimed to want to represent. But the ACORN suit was just pebbles compared to the bigger issues that she would soon come to face. Everything she once lashed out on, she was becoming. Hillary, who once attacked large companies, was now defending them. Take, for instance, her 1979 case where she and the firm represented Coca-Cola. She successfully handled the case where an employee who claimed he was permanently disabled said he was wrongfully denied retirement benefits. Then there was the infamous scandal where billing records went missing from the Rose Law Firm. And after nearly 2 years of searches and subpoenas, they turned up in the First Lady's book room at the White House. Now, these were documents that detailed her work that she did for the Savings and Loan Association, Madison Guarantee. Hillary and Rose were hired by Madison Guarantee and the McDougalls to represent them after the S&L failed in the late 80s. Jim McDougal was convicted of 18 felony counts of fraud conspiracy, and the counts were brought for bad loans made by Madison S&L. But those documents had to disappear. The Clintons were in bed with the McDougalls in the Whitewater Development Corporation deal. That project also went sour. Yet during the investigation, prosecutors tried to link Hillary to Madison Guarantee, but couldn't because there were no billing records. That was until they were found by Carolyn Huber, a White House aide and former office manager of the Rose firm. Like that isn't a conflict of interest. Former advisor to Bill Clinton, George Stephanopoulos, recounts how these times at the Rose Law Firm impacted Bill's campaign for president. In his book, All Too Human, saying, quote, Hillary's investments and legal practice was embarrassing but not scandalous. The early stories were too convoluted to do any real political harm, but the Hillary controversy reached a fever pitch during the Illinois primary, end quote. But they did pay a toll on her husband's campaign. Stephanopoulos goes on to speak about a Monday morning at the Busy Bee coffee shop in Chicago when Clinton was talking to reporters and one of them asked to speak to Hillary. The question, if Hillary thought it was ethical for the governor's wife to be a partner in the law firm doing business with the state. Hillary's response? Well, I suppose I could have stayed home and baked cookies and had teas, but what I decided to do was to fulfill my profession, which I entered before my husband was in public life, end quote. But the truth is, Hillary's time as partner in the law firm was closely associated with her husband's political seat in the state of Arkansas. George Wells, a reporter who covered the court's 4 Arkansas papers, said the following in a 1994 interview with the Baltimore Sun, quote, "A few people would say that the Rose Law Firm was married to Governor Clinton, and there were businesses that thought it was to their advantage with the state to go to Rose," end quote. Now, we can't forget that everything Clinton did during her time at Rose are things she once was against. She turned her back on the people she claimed to represent. Even her college friend from Wellesley said so in her way. Jan Piercy said, quote, "If Hillary were doing what she wanted to do in this world, she would not be a partner in a corporate law firm. But she was, and she involved herself in scandalous and corrupt behavior." So with this chapter now opened on the Clintons, we understand why she wants to hide this part of her story. But we have to ask, how does she possibly think she'll be able to escape this too? Besides all the incidents we just mentioned, there are still many chapters remaining open from her time at the Rose Law Firm. Take, for instance, Whitewater and the death of Vince Foster. Now, this is why this is another part of Hillary's forgotten past that is anything but closed.